So how about another story? This one's about my first ever customer dinner in mainland China. I was in Hong Kong a few months. Had hired my number two first employee and most loyal, who stayed with me at this company for the number of years we were there together, built the business. I'll not dox anybody, so I'll call her Susan, which wasn't her name. But anyway, Susan and I went up to Shenzhen. Shenzhen is like the Wild West of China. It's right across the border from Hong Kong. So I lived on the island, so you get on the subway, go under Victoria Harbor, pop up in Kowloon side and TST, Sim Sat Choi, and you go to the train station, you get on the train, you go up through the new territories of Hong Kong to the Chinese border on one side of a little stream. I hesitate to even call it a river. And on the Hong Kong side is Hong Kong immigration. You go through Hong Kong immigration, and then you walk across this bridge. This is maybe a couple hundred meters, and you go through Chinese immigration, and then you come out in Shenzhen, which wild place. Okay, it was a special economic zone, so people who lived and worked in Shenzhen were allowed a lot of privileges and lifestyle choices that the rest of China was unable to enjoy. And there were a few economic zones. Shanghai was one, Guangzhou, Shenzhen. So we went to a Shangri-La hotel. You'll hear that name quite a lot in my videos. I think I had one in the previous video, my first trip to China, and in my trip to Shanghai, trying to figure out what we were selling in Shanghai. Anyway, all the Shangri-La hotels had a Chang Palace, which is a Chinese restaurant. So we go in the Chinese restaurant, we meet these resellers that we're hoping will resell our products in Shenzhen. And they ordered, beers and dinner, late afternoon, early evening dinner. So we're sitting there, and here comes the waiter with a big tray he's carrying, like this, and he sets it down on the table. And there on the tray was the largest, humongous lobster I've ever seen in my life, right? This thing was huge, and it was still alive. All right, so the waiter proceeds to pull out this little fancy-looking chisel and a little fancy-looking hammer, and he cracks a little circle on the back of the lobster tail, okay? And he takes this piece of shell off, and underneath is the lobster. I hesitate to say lobster meat because he's still alive, right? And the meat is like undulating and moving like this. And then he grabs this slicing knife and he just starts slicing off pieces and putting them on little plates and handing them out to everybody. So I get this little plate with a slice of lobster meat on it that's like literally like undulating across the plate as I'm looking at it. And that's the story, folks. So that was my first experience, and the answer is yes, you have to eat it. What you find is when you do business in China, especially, mid-90s doesn't sound like a long time ago in terms of people going into China, but it was still, Farangs and Westerners like me were still somewhat rare, not really rare. And when you would meet with Chinese customers, they would try and challenge you to see what you would eat. And, for the first year and a half, I would pretty much eat anything they put in front of me just to accept the challenge. After a while, though, it's like they'll ask you what you want, and you just say, you get what you eat, and I'll eat that. And then that kind of put all of that craziness to rest. I've got one more story, interesting story about probably my most famous meal in all the years I was doing business in China, and I'll do that in another video. But this was my first experience of live lobster. All right, take care. Coming at you from the third world. Take care.